We're going to talk about types in Python. There are two basic numerical types in Python, integer and float. The integer is a number without any decimal points, while float, or floating number, has decimal points. They both can be positive or negative. Now, what if you say a number like 10.0 is an integer or float? Technically, it is exactly the same as 10 without the decimal zero. However, in computer language, so long you have the decimal points defined, it is treated as a different number than integer. It is a float. This has to do with the underlying representation of numbers. We don't need to concern too much about how the numbers are represented. I just want you to be aware of the differences. A string is a sequence of characters surrounded by single quotes. For example, Baishan, grade 9, they're strings. Now, what about 100? 100 by itself is a number, but here, this number is enclosed in single quotes, so it is a string. Again, similar to integers and floats, a string 100 is stored differently in computer than number 100. You can also use double quotes to define a string, but here I think we want to just make a convention to use single quotes for strings. Boolean types is used whenever you have a condition. The condition can either be true or false. There's no third possibility for a condition. It has to be true or false. A list is a collection with ordered items. A list is defined by using these square brackets. For instance, we have a list 1, 2, 3. Basically it's an integer number list. A list doesn't have to have the items of the same type. For example, the second list has 2 items. The first item is a character. However, the second item is a number, 100. The tuple is very similar to list. It is a collection with ordered items. You use these rounded brackets to define a tuple, or parentheses to define a tuple. The difference between a tuple and a list is changeable or mutable. So you can add items or remove items from list. However, for tuple, once it is defined, it cannot be changed. A dictionary is a collection with each item is a key value pair. For instance, our dictionary here has only one entry in it. The key is a string. In fact, is the ISBN number. And the value for that entry is the book. So basically, you have a value, in this case, a book's name, associated with the key. You use dictionary to look up something. A set is also a collection. However, a set does not or cannot have duplicated items here. This set defines, well, all those Ivy League schools. For both dictionary and sets, the order of the items in it are not important. We will learn how to use each of the types, when to use which in our later discussions. we know there are different types. Now I'd like to introduce you a few methods to convert from one type to another. For example, you can use int, parentheses. This is a method. Don't worry about too much about the syntax here. Just keep in mind, if you want to convert a number to integer, for example, convert a floating point number to integer, you can use this, int. If we want to convert a number from integer to float, use float. Now, if you want to convert a number to a string, you use string, parenthesis, or string method. We will not practice this at this point. I just want to give you the reference here for later use. Now let's do a few exercises in Python console to understand some of the implications of types. Let's do addition, 1 plus 2. No surprise, 1 plus 2 is 3. These are the addition of two integer numbers. Then what about I do this? It looks like the same, still 1 plus 2, but if you know what a string is defined, in fact, the first one is a string because you see the single quotes. Does it make sense for us to add a string to a number? Let's see. Well, we got an error. It's a type error. It says, oh, you can only concatenate string to a string. That makes sense. So if we really want to do that addition, you have to convert the string number 1 to an integer, and then plus 2. Now you get the correct result, or the result you want. Now let's look at another very interesting example. Suppose I have a very big number. I don't know how many lines there, but it's a lot. Let's do some addition. Plus 2. Well, it got to be correct because the ones is 1. 2 plus 9 is 1. So we verified this must be correct. Now what if I do this? Oops. Guess what the result would be? Now, you know, whenever we have a decimal points defined for a number, so it is stored as floating point in the computer. And it's a different representation than integer numbers stored by Python. So if you do the two floating points addition, it in fact will give you something. Guess what? Well, it's not quite as accurate as the integer addition. These examples I give you just for you to keep in mind the implications or the subtle differences of using different types in your program.